The Dark Secret of WEATHEREND by John Bellairs. Chapter 8. Every muscle in Anthony's body grew tense. He pressed his hands very hard against his face, digging the nails into his skin. Holding his breath, he waited for the horrible pain to begin. In his fevered brain, a thought formed. Please, let me just black out. Any minute now, any second now, it would start, and then... An icy mist blew over Anthony's body. That, and nothing more. For several seconds longer, he held his rigid pose. Then he took his hands away from his face and looked around. Miss Eels was lying flat on the top of the wall, her hands over her head. She, too, straightened up and peered blearily around. The leaves were quiet. The whirring sound had stopped. Except for a couple of minor cuts and scrapes, they were all right. Well now, said Miss Eels as she brushed dirt off her knees. Life is full of surprises, isn't it? I thought we were going to be turned into hamburger. I guess old Nasty up there in the mansion is toying with us, having his own ghoulish kind of fun. Let's clear out before our kindly host changes his mind. We'll have to leave our coats behind, but that's better than having our pelts nailed to Mr. Borkman's barn door, don't you think? Anthony nodded glumly. He took off his coat and draped it over the barbed wire. Then, gripping the top of the fence, he vaulted over and dropped to the ground. When he looked up, he saw Miss Eels hanging by her hands from the top of the wall. She was afraid to let go. It's okay, Miss Eels, Anthony called. There's a big pile of leaves down here, and they'll... Anthony clapped his hand to his mouth. He realized what he had just said. Break my fall? Said Miss Eels sarcastically. Okay. 1, 2, 3, bombs away. And she dropped into the leaf pile. She landed on her heels, wobbled a bit, and then fell over onto her back. Immediately she scrambled to her feet and glanced nervously around, as if she expected the leaves to leap up and attack her, but they lay quiet. Are you okay? Anthony asked anxiously as he came running up to her. More or less, she said, sighing. We'd better start hiking. It's at least 9 miles back to Hoosac, maybe more. I'm glad I wore my sensible shoes. What about Emerson? Anthony asked. There's not a blessed thing we can do about him, said Miss Eels, shaking her head gloomily. Anthony and Miss Eels started walking. It was dark on the road at first, but later the moon rose over the trees and made the going a little easier. Finally, they arrived at the Rolling Stone Library, and who should be sitting on the steps that led up the grassy bank but Emerson Eels. Em! Miss Eels whooped joyfully, running around towards him. Em, it's you! She threw her arms around her brother and gave him a big hug. Good evening, said Emerson, and he smiled in a dreamy, distant way. Well, we didn't quite do what we set out to do, did we? Miss Eels stared curiously at Emerson. Why was he acting so unbelievably calm? Then she hugged her brother again, hard. I'm just glad you're okay. She paused and again peered questioningly at him. You are okay, aren't you? Emerson nodded. I think so. I feel a bit dazed, but otherwise I'm all right. In case you're wondering, I've been teleported here. I got out of the truck and was starting up the walk, when Borkman opened the door to the mansion and said, Enjoy your trip, Mr. Eels. Then he raised his hand and zippo! Here I was, sitting on these blasted steps. He sighed and looked vaguely annoyed. I'm afraid that I've underestimated Anders Borkman. What happened to the truck? Asked Anthony. His feet were sore from walking, and he would have liked to ride the rest of the way home. Emerson shrugged. It seems to have vanished. I've been waiting here for hours hoping you would show up. Miss Eels told Emerson that they had found the holes in the 4 stone slabs. Strangely enough, he did not seem terribly pleased by this. Much good that information will do us, he snapped, shrugging. If we go anywhere near the estate, Borkman will just teleport us back home. He's too strong for us. Much too strong. Miss Eels shook her head in despair. What are we going to do? Just sit around while that monster cooks up a scheme that will destroy the world? Emerson gazed blandly at his sister. Heavens, Myra, I don't think he means to do that. Now that I've seen him, I am convinced that he merely wants to be left alone with his barometers and weather magic. Oh, he may cause a thunderstorm or a hailstorm from time to time, but I believe that's all he'll do. And who knows? Maybe he'll even find out something that will allow us to control the weather. What a wonderful boon that would be. I think we should leave Borkman alone. The only real danger would arise from our interfering with him. Miss Eels and Anthony were stunned. They couldn't believe what Emerson was saying. He had led the expedition because he was convinced that Borkman's weather magic was a threat to the entire world. And now he seemed to think that Borkman was just a harmless crank. It was all very mysterious. Miss Eels folded her arms and looked very hard at her brother for a long time. Emerson, she said finally, do you mean that you're going to just give up? That's not like you. Not like you at all. Where did you get the idea that Borkman is merely fooling around with magic? You didn't think that before. What has come over you? Emerson avoided his sister's gaze. He looked off into space, and in the moonlight his expression seemed strangely peaceful, but also a bit stubborn. Nothing has come over me, he said calmly. I've merely changed my mind, that's all. He got up and brushed dirt off the seat of his coveralls. And now, he said in a cold, business-like tone, I think we had better head back to Hoosac. Myra, do you still have a key to this library? If so, I think we should call a taxi. Standing around in the night air is not going to do any of us a great deal of good. Miss Eels and Anthony stared at each other, mystified. With a deep sigh, Miss Eels reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a key ring. When they were inside the library, Miss Eels called the Gegenfurter Taxi Company, which was run by Ray Gegenfurter, the son of an old friend of hers. She was sure that Ray would drive them home without asking too many questions. As they sat waiting for the cab to arrive, Anthony began thinking about what would happen to him when he got home. It was after 8, and it had been dark for a good 3 hours. Convincing his parents that he had been playing touch football all this time would be impossible. And what explanation could he give for losing his good winter coat? Anthony braced himself for the wrath that was to come. When Anthony got home, he discovered that his worst fears had come true. His mother was furious. It seemed that she had been calling everywhere to find out where he was, including nosy Mrs. Schweikert, who had told her she had seen Anthony heading up Pine Street toward Mrs. Eels' house earlier that day. If there was anything that Mrs. Monday hated, it was lying. And so she told Anthony that while he could go to school and work at the library in the afternoons, otherwise he had to stay at home for 2 whole weeks. And I hope you'll realize that I'm doing this to teach you a lesson, she said. I don't like making up stories and sneaking around. Most of all, I don't like your hanging around with somebody who's such a bad influence. Everybody in this town is talking about that old Miss Eels and how crazy she is. Why do you want to pal around with a screwball like that? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Yes, Mom, said Anthony. But actually, he wasn't ashamed at all. He went upstairs to his room and bolted the door. Then he sat down on his bed and cried. How could his mother be so unfair? How could she have misjudged Miss Eels so terribly? Miss Eels was a wonderful person who was in a lot of trouble, and all Mrs. Monday could say was that she was a nut. In the midst of his anger and tears, Anthony wondered what his mom would have said if he had told her about the trip out to the Borkman estate. Yes, Mom, we're trying to save the world from a crazy guy who's using magic statues to cause terrible weather. Anthony smiled through his tears as he imagined his mother chuckling at this. She would think he was just joking around. The trouble was, the stuff about Borkman was true. Anthony relapsed into gloom again. What were they going to do? They had tried Emerson's plan, and it had failed. He and Miss Eels had found the holes in the statues, but now Emerson insisted that there was no need to destroy them, that Borkman was not evil, as they had thought. Emerson's change of heart was very confusing. It had left Anthony worried and disheartened. Could there be something wrong with him? Had he been hypnotized by Borkman? Or was Emerson simply smarter than Anthony? Did he know things that Anthony and Miss Eels didn't? Anthony's brain was whirling. Nothing made sense anymore. With a shuddering sob, he pulled himself together. He blew his nose loudly and started undressing. He wanted to take a shower and then go sit in his pajamas in front of the TV set with his father and brother until it was time to go to bed. But suddenly Anthony heard something, a rattling sound like rain against the window pane, only louder. He rushed to the window and looked down into the yard. Under the apple tree, bathed in the light of a cold, frosty moon, stood a small, shadowy figure. Terror clutched at Anthony's heart. Who, or what, was down there waiting for him? Anthony forced himself to look again, and then he almost laughed. It was Miss Eels. Quickly he raised the window and stuck his head out. "Anthony," Miss Eels called hoarsely, "come on down. I need to talk to you. It's important."